Hello, everybody. So, if you are studying to get your real estate license or get your broker's license and you need help and you haven't already done so, head on over to passbuddy.com. That's where I have all of my practice exams, webinars, crash courses, and of course, if you need extra help, you could always sign up for private tutoring with me over at passbuddy.com. So, today we're going to be doing a word cloud. Now, if you're an audio only listener, what I will tell you is this: I will tell you all the words that we have up here on the screen. However, if you are watching this on YouTube and you have the visual here, what I want you to do is pause it and get your notepad out because I want to make sure that you're writing down the notes for these particular words because these are a lot of words that have to do with the definition of real property versus personal property. So you're talking about trade fixtures, things like that. But I will tell you all the words we have here. We have nine in total. We're going to go through those today. Those are devise, chattel, trade fixture, bundle of rights, accretion, avulsion, real property, fixture, and emblement. So the first word that I want to go over today is going to be devise. So let's talk about what this is. So to devise real property is to transfer it or to give it via a will. So if someone dies, testate, right? So this is another keyword that we're kind of squeezing in and sneaking in there. So if someone dies testate, meaning that they have a will, it's a situation where we would say that they are devising real property if they own real property. So we wouldn't say that they're devising a bass guitar or a baseball bat because that's not the word that we would use to pass on via will personal property or chattel. We'll get into that in a little bit. But devise specifically is if there is real property that's going to be transferred in the will. We would say that they are devising it. So, let's take a look at the next word that I want to go over. And this is one that always trips people up, and that is a trade fixture. So, a trade fixture, let's talk about what this is. So, the technical definition is a trade fixture is a piece of personal property, such as a machine or shelving, that a commercial tenant attaches to a rented property to use in their business. Unlike standard fixtures, which become part of the real estate, trade fixtures can be removed by the tenant when the lease ends, provided the tenant is responsible for repairing any damage caused during the removal. So basically, this is something that is unique for commercial real estate. So business tenants, right? Someone that owns a nail salon, their sinks, their basins, things of that, those are considered to be personal property of the business. They're considered to be owned by the business. They're needed in order for it to actually exist. So there's a lot of times where those businesses will want to maybe move into a larger space. Maybe they need to relocate. And it's something that their equipment, although attached to the real estate, although attached to the unit, is going to go with the business. Now, granted, there is that caveat that they have to repair any type of damage that was done. Also, they have to bring the property back to its original state. So it's a situation where if the real estate was, if the walls were closed off, there was no plumbing, whatever the case may be, they have to return it to its original state. So that is a trade fixture. Now, let's jump into the next one. The next one I want to do is chattel. Chattel. So let's talk about this. This is just really a fancy word. Chattel is a fancy word for personal property. It's movable, right? So it's a situation where some instructors say chattel rhymes with cattle and cattle moves. It's a situation where personal property is movable. This is just a legal definition for personal property. So, like my guitar collection, my fountain pen collection, all of that we would all say is movable, and that is not real property. That is going to be something that goes with me. That is my personal belongings. So, let's talk about something that a lot of students get confused with. We're going to talk about right now. Next word, the bundle of rights. Now, there are different acronyms that instructors use. Now, your acronym that you're using to identify each of the bundle of rights might be different than the acronym I use. I use the acronym UPTEE, UPTEE. This is the legal rights to use, that's the U, possess, transfer, exclude, and encumber that are held by a real property owner. So when you own real estate, it is said that you own the legal rights to use, possess, transfer, exclude, and encumber. These are all held by those individuals. Now, again, you might have a different acronym based on your studies and based on your instructor, but this is what I use. And a lot of the words that you might have in your acronym might be synonymous with something I have here. But basically, it's a right to use the property. Go ahead and transfer it, exclude someone where you say, hey, you can't be here, possess it, meaning you could occupy it, and encumber it. So, encumber it means like you could mortgage the property, you can do things like that. So, let's jump into another word. What are we going to go with next? I think we're going to do accretion. So, accretion is one that I know students do get confused with a lot because here's the thing, they get confused with what different things water does to land, and they get confused with accretion. We'll go over some other ones too, like avulsion. Accretion is the gradual, underline the word gradual, the gradual natural process by which land is increased in size by the deposit of soil, sand, or other matter from a body of water like a river, lake, or the sea. The land added to the property as a result of accretion becomes the legal property of the adjoining landowner. So if it's basically added to my property, it would become my legal property. And if it's added to your property, it become your legal property. You are the adjoining landowner that is being created by this new land. And the key word here is that it's a gradual increase of land. And one of the ways that I always remember this is if you jumble up the letters in accretion, it kind of looks like creation, right? It kind of looks like creation. So we're creating lands. And also, let me say this is the opposite of erosion. Erosion is the gradual depletion or taking away of land by natural process. Literally, you could say take away increase with and just switch it out for the word decrease. And that's basically what you would have here. You would have that definition of erosion. So, a little bonus one here for you. Now, let's jump into another one. Let's talk about. So, we talked about accretion, right? I think it's natural to talk about avulsion, right? So we're going to talk about avulsion next because we kind of alluded to the fact that this is confusing for a lot of students. And this is, I'm going to say this, please underline the word sudden. This is the sudden and rapid loss of addition of land caused by natural force such as a flood, a hurricane, which moves or removes soil from one property and deposits it to another. Obviously, that's what has to do. It has to rip it apart and go somewhere else. So what happens is you could have land added or land taken away, but we wouldn't call that erosion or accretion because it's not gradual. This is the sudden rapid loss or addition. So the sudden rapid loss or addition of land is going to be considered avulsion, whether it is addition or subtraction, whatever the case may be. So you can imagine a hurricane or a flood comes through where there might be soil deposited onto one land that might have been somewhere else. It's a situation where you could have addition or subtraction. Because just imagine in your head a natural disaster and what occurs during that time. Okay. So this is a sudden or rapid loss or addition of land. Now, What's the next thing that we should talk about? We should talk about what real property is. I mean, here's the thing: we talk about real estate, we talk about realty, and all those are synonyms for real property. So let's talk about what it is. Real property is defined as land and everything that is permanently attached to it, including buildings and natural elements, as well as the legal rights associated with that ownership. So basically, real property, in the definition of that, we have the bundle of rights, we have your air rights, your subsurface rights. All of those are actually included in real property. So when I say I own real property, I'm also saying I own the land, I own the trees, I own the subsurface rights, I own the bundle of rights to this real property. I own any buildings, any permanently attached things on it. I also own anything that's naturally occurring, the ivy, the weeds, the trees, the bushes, all those things I would own if I own real property. So that is what it is. And sometimes they also define real property as going to the center of the earth all the way up to infinity. So basically it's kind of like a cone that just points down from the center of the earth, and obviously imaginary, right? Because no one's been to the center of the earth. It's an imaginary line that goes from the center of the earth all the way up to infinity. But of course there are things that also limit your ability to do anything with it. I can't build a skyscraper on my property because of government powers and things like that. And we'll get into it in another video, right? But that's basically something that you have to keep in mind too, that you can't do anything you want because the government can restrict that. So, let's look at the next one. We're almost through this little word cloud today. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, hit subscribe. It really does help us out over here at the channel. So, next one I want to talk about is a fixture. We talked about a trade fixture, but we haven't talked about a fixture. So this is any object that is permanently attached to the property, such as a light fixture, built-in cabinets, or landscaping. Because they become part of the real estate, fixtures are typically included in the sale unless otherwise specified in the purchase agreement. And this differs from personal property like freestanding lamp or refrigerator, which is easily movable. Again, chattel is movable. A fixture is part of the real property, right? Permanently attached. So you, what happens is this: a fixture is also another way that I would like to word it is it is an item of personal property that has now become real property through attachment, right? Through it being attached in some manner, shape, or form, it is a situation where it has now become part of the property, right? So freestanding things such as lamps, refrigerators, although might go with the property, are not assumed to be part of the real estate in a sale or transfer. So, last word for the day: emblement. What is an emblement? So this is interesting because this is an annual crop such as corn or wheat that is produced by a tenant's labor. Keyword is tenant's labor, and is considered the tenant's personal property. So what happens here is this, okay? An emblement is the rights to harvest the annual crop. So if there is a tenant farmer and then the lease ends or something happens, it's a situation where they have the rights to the next harvest. They don't have the rights to the harvest in perpetuity, because what happens is annual crops are considered in legal terms fructus industrials. And this is like a bonus word. So write this down. Fructus industrials means in Latin, and I might be butchering the pronunciation of that. I apologize. But what it is it's going to be fruits of labor. So the legal theory here is that there has been labor applied to this particular uh, crop, and the person who has applied the labor has the rights to harvest it on the next harvest. So that's what an implement is. It is the rights that a tenant farmer has to harvest the next harvest that they've applied the labor to. So, with that being said, we're all wrapped up for today. And remember, if you haven't already, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Also, I want to mention this one last time. If you haven't already, head on over to passbuddy.com and we'll help you pass your real estate exam. Everyone, have a great one, and I will see you real soon.